As you can imagine, I get many comments on our videos. Probably one of the most popular is, when do I spread my compost onto my no dig plots? Well, in today's video, I'll tell you all about it. Hello and welcome back to our no dig Norfolk garden. So in answer to your question, really depends on how you've been growing. Myself and Mrs. W's garden is a self-perpetuating garden, really. There is always food in here. So therefore we need to feed the soil life in our soil at different times of the year. At the back end of last year, in 2023, we had brassicas in here, which were feeding us toward the end of that year, sort of November, December, and into early January. And then, of course, it's also grown onions here. We've had the globo onions, we've had the zabroon shallots. So it's already grown 2 crops. And the reason why I'm actually putting the compost on here now is because I'm going to be putting some more brassicas in here. Within our crop rotation, and it's a very loose crop rotation that myself and Mrs. W use, onions are generally, or alliums if you like, are generally grown in this area. The fertility is built up really lovely and we get some really good onions from this patch, don't we?
We do, yes, definitely.
And then of course, as I say, then brassicas then follow that, which we then eat by the early part of the following year, and then onions go back in again in the March. And going in this here now, it's no different. Well, I should be putting some cabbages and some cauliflowers in here, which we shall enjoy in the early part of 2025. But because those brassicas are they're low growing. You know, you think of a cabbage up to here, same with a cauliflower. When it comes to sort of October, November time, which is a great time of the year to be able to put your compost mulch onto your plots, it will be difficult because those plants will be in the way. So that's why I'm doing this job here and now. Whereas here, where we have the sprouts and our kale plants, this was actually fed with compost. We actually spread our compost here last November. And it's grown broad beans, and then following those broad beans were the crops you see now, the sprouts and the kale. But these are quite tall plants, as you can see, and I can easily, come October, November time, spread compost underneath them. As time goes by over the next few weeks, the bottom leaves will actually be coming off because they won't be doing much for the plant anymore. And I'll be able to get right underneath those and just use a shovel and just put some compost under there and spread it about with my hands. Whereas here, where our purple sprouting broccoli are growing. This had plants in it all the way up until June time. So I was able to then put some, in this case it's mushroom compost that I've managed to acquire, and we spread that over these beds then. So these won't need feeding again until the following year. You can see here that Mrs. W has planted up this bed now. In this first row we have some kohlrabi, and that's a variety called Delicacy Purple. We'll be able to enjoy that a bit later on this year. In the next row, however, we have some cauliflowers, which is, I think they're called Oreo, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
And these will harvest in 2025. So it's going to be January, February. Next door to those, we've planted some more Jade Savoy cabbage, and they will harvest again in 2025. The ones that we'll have this side of Christmas are looking really good, aren't they?
They certainly are, yeah.
Looking great cabbages. And then in the very last row we've set the very last transplants of Calibres, a variety called Marathon.
Marathon, yeah.
And I do thank you all for your kind comments regarding the Marathon. I know a lot of you have said to me, you know, on your recommendation, I know you grow it, so we've grown it. And you've all said that you've had such amazing results. And it's a great, great variety of Calabrese broccoli. Nice size heads, and they hold, they don't go and rise to flowers straight away. You've got a few days that you know, you can let them stay in there together, let them get that little bit larger. These were from a sowing right at the very end of June. June time is normally the last time that you will sow these. They take about 80 days or so to produce. So, yeah, we've got the rest of August, September, October. Yeah, we're approaching 80 days. And here in our New Dig Norfolk garden, where we grow in zone 9A, we wouldn't expect to see our first frost until mid-November. And in recent years, it's been later than that, hasn't it? We haven't seen a frost until the following year in January. Yeah. And if there has been one, it's just been a very, very light one, nothing too heavy. We also see some quite nice days into October, and certainly the early part of November. So I'm very hopeful that we will have some nice Calabrese broccoli heads to enjoy during the month of November. But of course, you can't put your compost mulch on unless you actually have some. And I think I said, probably 4 or 5 videos back now, August is probably the busiest time of the year for harvesting things. There is always things coming out of the ground. There shouldn't really be any excuse for a lack of green material, which is what helps to heat your compost up. Browns you might struggle with, but again, as I've said many times, seek out your local gardener. It's what we do. When they do a job, they bring it over to us, and all I do is shred it. But when I get green material, my new favourite way of doing it is just to put it on the grass and actually use the lawnmower. It breaks it up. Even these larger pieces, they're already well broken down.
Starts the composting process off that little bit quicker, doesn't it?
Exactly, Mrs. W. Exactly. And then all you have to do is to take all of this lovely green material, put it into your compost heap. Mix it with a bit of brown.
Away we go.
And Beauty here, really quite warm, isn't she? 60 degrees. And if you keep topping that up, it's already halfway there. And then all I do is just pile it up. I've got a bay next door here where I've been putting the fresher stuff in. And this is the stuff that you just see me put onto the beds. I don't need it any finer than that. And over the hello Poppy, hello. And over the winter period, this will just break down even more. And that's the kind of results that we get from using just our own DIY made home composters. Now myself and Mrs. W, as you can see, we've planned for harvest all through the year. And actually within our plan at the moment is to have runner beans, French beans. And they are now starting their harvest in earnest. It's the going bean mad season, Poppy.
And going bean blind when you're trying to pick them.
So those harvests will start in earnest, and over the next few weeks we shall be eating plenty of French runner beans and runner beans, pole beans as some people know them. So there's a real variety in the garden, which I'm really happy about. Each year it gets better and better, doesn't it? We think,
it does.
Oh, we'll try and grow that and we'll have that at this time of the year. As you know, I think I told you a few videos back, I don't even sow these beans until mid-June. Because by the end of June, our peas are finished. It's very important that I grow lots of peas and get the harvest in, because they are one of Mrs. W's absolute favourites.
And also now our little granddaughter Rosie, that's all she asks for, even though the peas have now disappeared off the frame.
Walks up this garden and goes, peas, doesn't she? Peas.
She does.
Do let us know in the comments what you're up to. Are you growing food that you will have later on this year, and food that you will have into 2025? Do let us know how you're getting on. I know a lot of you, you're always saying to me, I want to do that. But also let us know when you put your compost down. Are you a traditionalist and think it's only October, November and December? Because for us, it's not. It's when it suits us. It's when it suits our plots. If it's ready for it, on it goes. If it happens to be October and November, that's fine. But in the case of all the plantings that we've just done, that job is already done now. It's closed off. Mrs. W can tick that off our list.
I can.
It will grow those brassicas and we shall enjoy those. And if you're still with us and you're still subscribed, next March, you'll see I'll put all of our onions into there to follow those. Now, of course, when it does come to new dig, you do need compost of some description. I can actually buy in horse manure, which we know has not been treated. So nothing's gone onto that field. We know we have a source of that, don't we? We also have a good source where we can get mushroom compost. But actually myself and Mrs. W are making more and more compost with every passing year. And I'm finding myself buying less and less in. If you want to know how we've been doing that, then watch this playlist coming up next, all about how we compost. Have a great gardening week. We shall see you on the next one.